Hello and welcome to the Game Day Podcast from talkSPORT with me, Sam Matterface, the former Chelsea defender Scott Minto and talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Coming up on the show this time, we've got the England Lions celebrating the England Under-21 European Championship victory. It was an unbelievable, brilliant end to the game. The latest from the transfer window on the way as well, as Manchester United say goodbye to David De Gea and make a move for Andre Onana. Plus, we'll continue our countdown to the Premier League season. 32 days, or 31, depending on when you're watching or listening to this, to the Premier League season starts. We're going to be talking to the Sheffield United manager, Paul Heckingbottom, on the show today about his plans for the new season. And we'll be discussing Liverpool and Crystal Palace as well. It's all on the Game Day Podcast from talkSPORT. Saturday night, I stood in my kitchen, crammed around a laptop, watching the feed of the England Under-21s and listening to Crook on talkSPORT. Me and my 6-year-old and his uncle all waiting for the full-time whistle. We're thinking, it's done. 97 minutes. It's done. It's done. It's done. The penalty's given. My 6-year-old is on the actual worktop, watching the screen, bent over, looking at it. And he turns to me with his head in his hands and he says, it's not a penalty for Spain, is it? I said, it is, mate, I'm afraid. He went, no, we've got no chance now. Put his head in his hands. I thought, oh, God, he's going to collapse here. And I said, hey, you never know, kid. He's a brilliant goalkeeper. Just wait. Boom. Explosion of joy. He jumps off the worktop into my arms. We're dancing around the kitchen. The rest is history. Absolutely terrific. Let's kick things off with England's young Lions. Lee Carsley's men, all champions of Europe, following a 1-0 victory over Spain. What a night, Crook. Great commentary, by the way, on the James Trafford moment. Brilliant. And he was the star of the show. But he was the star of the show not only for the last few minutes of that game, but the whole tournament. Anyone who's watched the rest of the tournament will know he's been terrific. And I mentioned it last week on the pod. He's a vital cog in the wheel.
Yeah, you did. You hinted that he'd get a Premier League club, and we know now that Premier League club will be Burnley. He's hot-footing it back from Georgia to undergo medical and agree personal terms. £19 million seemed a lot of money for a player who's only ever played as high as League One. He'll be the 17th most expensive goalkeeper in history. But as you say, he's certainly only underlined his reputation in this tournament. Tremendous achievement. First goalkeeper ever to go through a whole under-21 Euros without conceding a goal. And you have to admire England's defensive solidity, not just him, but I think Colwill and Harwood-Bellis, two really talented young players in front of him. I think Colwill's got every chance of being part of the senior Euros next summer. And I think whoever gets Harwood-Bellis this summer from Manchester City will be getting a good player as well.
Levi Colwill should be playing for Chelsea next season, Scott, but we've got quite a high indication that he would rather be playing down at the Amex Stadium for Roberto De Zerbi. How does Maurizio Pochettino convince him to stay?
Well, if he offers him a first-team start, then I think that's it. You know, however bad Chelsea were and however good Brighton were, with the greatest respect to Brighton, it's a great time to be a Brighton fan and a Brighton player. If you're offered first-team football for either of those, you go for Chelsea. Simple as that. But will he offer it that team? That's the thing. You know, you got Badiashile, you got Chalobah, you got Fofana, and you got Silva. You know, is he willing to fight for his place? Because I don't think Poch will actually say to him, look, you will be a starter after what happened in the Euros. So, look, is he willing to do that?
Well, who's better than him out of those 4 or 5? I mean, Thiago Silva obviously has got more experience or whatever, and he's a brilliant defender. But apart from that, are there any actually significantly better than him in that group? I mean, after what I saw last season, I'm not entirely convinced there is.
I think out of those 5, I personally would go Badiashile as number 1. Fofana made a lot of mistakes. I think Silva can't, as good as he's been in a Chelsea shirt, can't play in a back 4. And Chalobah, I think, has done really well to come through the ranks, but I wouldn't say he's that much further than Colwill as well. So if I were him and I really wanted to be at Chelsea and make my way at Chelsea, I'd say I trust myself for this particular season. He's always got another season off the back of that. But, you know, young lads or any players want first-team football here and now. So we'll have to see what Brighton offer him, or, you know, in terms of first team, but also mainly what Poch offers him.
Yeah, I watched most of the games over the under-21 campaign, in fact, all of the England games. And the standout performers for me, not only Colwell and Harwood Bellis, who played at the heart of the defence, but the two midfield boys. I mean, Angel Gomez, for me, is the standout player, but his partnership with Jones was excellent. I felt really sorry for Jacob Ramsey, who didn't make the final after being injured earlier in the competition. But at the end, the celebration sort of showed you that they, as a group, really valued his contribution. I think he's going to be a great player for Aston Villa this season. He's brilliant in his breakout season last year, but he's going to miss the first few weeks of the campaign with injury. Crookie, you watched the semi and the final for talkSPORT. Who were your standout performers over those matches?
Well, I agree with you on Gomez. And actually, there's a lot of Manchester United fans who've been watching the tournament and suggesting maybe that they made a mistake letting him go. I thought he was excellent as that defensive shield, really tenacious, but also started a lot of attacks with his passing. Morgan Gibbs-White I was a big fan of anyway going into the tournament, and I think he proved his worth, particularly in that semi, having missed a penalty to bounce back and then score the opening goal. But I think actually who impressed me the most? Lee Carsley. When you look at England's record going into this tournament, and Adi Boothroyd suggesting it was an impossible job, his record is absolutely incredible. To go from, I think they only won 2 of their previous 7 tournament matches, and to go the whole tournament, winning every game, didn't concede a goal, as we mentioned. I think Carsley, for the team spirit that he fostered as well, and I think that, you know, when they pulled out the Ramsey shirt at the end of the game, that told you everything you need to know about this group of players. So, yeah, I think he deserves an awful lot of credit. I'm not sure he'll stay, though. I know he's weighing up his future, but he might just feel with a lot of these players now overage by the time the next tournament comes around that potentially he's taken them as far as he can.
Well, I mentioned to you earlier in the week that I knew that Ireland were interested in him, certainly looking at him. But Premier League clubs will now be looking at him as well, mainly because of the atmosphere that he fostered, the football that his team played. Him and Ashley Cole got on very, very well. There's a lot of respect in that group. Julian Lescott was involved in that. He's definitely leaving at the end of this cycle because he wants to become a technical director somewhere else. Ashley Cole could end up being the England under-21 manager if things pan out, because he certainly wants to be a manager in his own right. But Carsley himself, really, this is a big opportunity for him, isn't it? You know, because his stock is incredibly high. He can't achieve any more with England under-21s. But if he stays in situ for another year and ends up doing a reasonable job or just keeps things on an even keel over the course of the next 12 months, the truth is this, is that when it comes to next summer, there's probably going to be a change in terms of the England manager. Could he be the one that then steps into the breach, Scott?
I think that's a big jump. I really do. But there's no sort of outstanding...
The same jump that the previous manager made.
Yeah. And the previous manager did very well. I didn't see Gareth doing that. So absolutely that argument can be put forward. I'm just not so sure, but I don't think there's too many outstanding candidates, to be honest with you, at the moment. You know, is Eddie Howe going to leave Newcastle? I wouldn't. Graham Potter possibly, but his stock at the moment isn't as high as it could be. And if you know, obviously what you want is progression and that kind of feel that Gareth Southgate has nourished. So, look, at first thought, I'd say no, but if you look deeply into it, with the fact there's no outstanding candidates and exactly what you pointed out there, what happened with Gareth and how well I think he's done, he's definitely in the frame, but I'm not so sure. Okay,
we'll see what happens with him and them over the course of the next 12 months or so. Let's get straight into the transfer window now, because Manchester United are saying goodbye to someone who's been a massive part of the last decade. David De Gea has left Manchester United after 12 years. Look, I mean, I think it's the right call. It's about time. I think over the course of last season, you saw that his style of football, the way he plays, is not conducive to what Erik Ten Hag wants to do. And if they want progression, they need someone who's better with the ball at their feet. Everyone's accepted that. That's fine. A few Manchester United fans were a little bit irate over the weekend because some were suggesting that the way his departure has been handled was not befitting someone who has served the club so well. Crook, do you agree with that?
To a point, I think you have to agree. 12 years is a long time in the modern game to be at one football club. And I think for the majority of that tenure, David De Gea has been a very good goalkeeper, certainly been a very good servant. I do think the timing is right. I think they need a new number one. I think the mistakes that he made, particularly the game that you two commentated at West Ham on that Sunday evening, and in the cup final, highlighted that actually his star is on the wane. But I think ideally, I'd have liked United to make that decision before the final game of the season, certainly before the FA Cup final, so that De Gea did get the chance to say goodbye. On the other hand, I think it's about time United started acting like a ruthless football club, making bold, brave decisions. And this is a big decision, because the easy decision would have been to allow him to sign a new contract on reduced terms and just keep treading water in the goalkeeping department.
And that's the key point, isn't it, Scott? Because so often over the last few years, even the last decade, when you've had those running the club that didn't have the expertise of Sir Alex Ferguson, you've now got a different regime behind the scenes as well as a new manager. And the contracts would be handed out, extensions given to players who weren't competing for a first-team place regularly enough. This is a sign that actually they are being a little bit more ruthless, and they've got a change of direction, and they know which direction that is.
Look, I think there's quite a few things here with De Gea and the club as well. I mean, there's for too many times players in recent years have been given an extension of the contract when they haven't really deserved it, just because they wanted to try and protect the transfer fee and the value. So I think that's wrong there. I personally think goalkeeper, as much as in an ideal world, yes, you bring in an Onana for a De Gea, striker was number one. They haven't done that as yet. And if they're going to spend £50 million on Onana, why not use that £50 plus another 50 to get a proper striker? Because I think as De Gea, as he hasn't been quite the form he's been in the last few years, he's not been the worst goalkeeper in the world, and he's still kept loads of clean sheets as well. Just whenever he makes an error, it's very high profile. Striker, midfielder, they got Mount. I probably would have gone for Declan Rice if I was United, and a centre-back, and then goalkeeper is number 4. So, if you're talking about budget, what's happening with the owners, we don't know how much money we've got to spend. Is goalkeeper really as important a position as the striker? And I would say no.
Well, Erik Ten Hag obviously thinks it is, and that's the way he wants to play his football.
Obviously he does. And he's the manager. And listen, who am I to argue with Ten Hag? I feel they need a 20-goal-a-season striker. They get that, a Harry Kane. You get up to £100 million. I'm telling you now, even with De Gea in goal, they're in the game for going for the title. I just think there's a little bit of a lack of respect by some with David De Gea. Yes, he's made mistakes, and yes, he's not great with his feet. But how many years has he won Player of the Year? He's been in a really poor United side over the last decade, and he's saved them at times. I agree with
you. He's saved them in seasons where they've really struggled. He's been the standout player. Scott says they need a 20-goal-a-season striker, Crook. They're moving towards trying to sign Atalanta's Rasmus Højlund. Is there any progression on that? And is he someone who's going to get 20 goals?
Well, the issue with Scott's argument, he mentioned Harry Kane there. Daniel Levy isn't selling Harry Kane to Manchester United. So the reason they didn't progress on that was because they knew that it would be a futile fight to try and win. Victor Osimhen... He ain't even going to sell him to Bayern Munich for 80, 90 million quid. He's not going to sell him for 120 million pounds. I can tell you this as a fact. There's no way that Daniel Levy is going to allow that player to go for anything less than 130 million pounds.
Listen, it's just a name that I chucked out, someone who we know as 20 goals a season. But the point is, that's what I feel they need, whether it's Harry Kane or someone else.
Victor Osimhen is the other name in the frame, but £125 million for him. I think, United could have gone all in on a number 9, but that would have been it. We know they're operating under fairly strict financial restraints this summer because they've got FFP issues, because they've been such bad sellers over the years. And unless they can rake in some money by getting people like Maguire off the wage bill, which is easier said than done, their budget is going to be about 120 million. So they've got Mason Mount in, they've got Onana, they're trying to work on Højlund, as you say. I think probably Atalanta are going to have to reduce their asking price. He wants to make the move. And I'm not against the signing, because this is a young, up-and-coming player they see has massive potential for the future. I quite like that as the direction of travel for Manchester United, because, again, they've wasted so much money on trying to sign household established names that just haven't delivered. I don't mind this as a transfer policy.
You poo-pooed me when I said they should sign Evan Ferguson.
No, well, what I told you was that Evan Ferguson wouldn't be sold by Brighton. But again, I wouldn't be against that. I think he's going to be a tremendous player. So you can see what Erik Ten Hag is trying to do now. And what I like about this window, Mason Mount was a move that was heavily led by Erik Ten Hag. Clearly so is Onana, and so will Højlund. And I think that's encouraging, because let's be honest, a lot of those people above Erik ten Hag have shown they don't know their way around the transfer window. So leave it to the manager. Let him identify the targets.
Jurriën Timber has completed his move to Arsenal. Declan Rice will do so this week. Max Kilman, Scott, can you imagine if you Maidenhead United made a U-turn at Wolves? Looked like he was going to Napoli. His former club, Maidenhead United, would have got a 20% sell-on clause. They must be livid. Think of all the new tracksuits they'd be able to buy, all the new gear for the training ground. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, whenever anyone says about tracksuits buy, I always think of Tony Cascarino. You know, he cost 12 tracksuits, didn't he, back in the day? I can't remember from where to where. But yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Crook and Hill.
Crook and Hill, that's it. And I'm actually going for breakfast with him tomorrow, so I'll bring that up. Yeah, I mean, listen, for a club like Maidenhead, that's them set up for the next 20 years, isn't it? So absolutely devastated. They're waiting for that move. I'm sure it will come at some point, if not this summer.
Good luck to him. Let's continue our countdown to the new season. We'll be shining a light on different clubs throughout the course of the summer. Today, we're going to talk Liverpool and Crystal Palace. But first, a newly promoted manager joins us. Paul Heckingbottom, hello, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning. How are you? You good?
Yeah, we're good, thank you. Listen, congratulations on promotion. I look from the outside looking in, it seemed from very far out that it was likely that you were going to get up into the Premier League. You and Burnley, you had such a good campaign. So tell me when you started planning for the Premier League and getting ready for your thoughts sort of for the new season.
Yeah, not until the job was done, and that's the truth. There's so much going on last season on off the pitch that I think if we'd have taken our eye off the ball at any point and not carried on with the same focus for the 46 games that, yeah, we could have come unstuck. So it was only when we beat West Brom at Bramall Lane that the focus shifted a little bit. And I'm still saying a little bit because we wanted to win the remaining games. We wanted to make sure that we finished strong. So, yeah, whilst the season was going on, we did give ourselves that luxury, if you like, of an extra 3 or 4 weeks where we could begin the conversations for this season.
What's the current state of play with the ownership? Because there have been several reports of takeovers. None of them have got over the line. Is that impacting your ability to recruit for the Premier League?
Well, not really, because we're just carrying on as if this is the ownership going forward. We've been clear on that, lots of conversations, and I think we'd be silly not to take that approach. So we're just recruiting with the budget we've been given. And if anything changed, then someone would let us know. And like I say, it would only change for the better. So we're continuing what we've got, trying to recruit, like I said, to the plan that we've got. And then if anything changes, it'll be a bonus.
Paul, as well as trying to add players this summer, how important is it that you keep hold of your star men? Because obviously, Njai, I think, was attracting Premier League interest in January. Sander Berger, I believe, is on a couple of lists of Premier League clubs. Are you confident that you can keep hold of both of those?
We're all on the same page. Prince Abdullah's come out and said the same. We want to keep them. We're going to try all we can to keep them. The difficulty is they've gone in the last year of the contract, and all of a sudden then it becomes a financial issue as well. But if it's anything football, we know exactly what we get from those players. They're really important to us, and I think they enjoy their time with us as well. We've been really good for them. So, yeah, nothing's a given. We're determined to try and keep the boys. But like we say, we know how difficult a transfer window can be. So, yeah, we've got our fingers crossed.
And in terms of the Premier League, I mean, it's a juggernaut. You look at clubs even down at the bottom of the table, the financial resources they have. How difficult is it going to be to stay there? And is this perhaps your biggest managerial test? Yeah,
we know that. We're under no illusions, but we have to then focus on what we do well and our strengths. Our strengths is our organisation. It's our team spirit. It's our will to win. So we have to make sure that we give our very best in every game. We know it's going to be difficult, and we also know and we are aware that sometimes our best is not going to be good enough. And that's a dynamic that you have to manage as well and make sure that no one gets disheartened, even when your best is coming up short. So, yeah, but a lot of us, and we've got a lot of players as well who's had success in the Premier League. And success is relative, isn't it? So our goals are different to Man City's, for example. But we're determined to do well. We're determined to give a good account of ourselves. And like I say, I know that our best will cause problems for teams. We just have to make sure we're delivering that more often than not.
Ryan Brewster, didn't really happen for him last time out. He's had a lot of injuries as well. How big a season do you feel this would be for him?
Yeah, he's going to get no pressure put on his shoulders from me. I really love the lad. He's come a long way. He's changed a lot as a person. He's had a couple of really difficult seasons. We were just building our relationship, if you like, on and off the pitch in terms of what we expected from him, and how we went about changing his game slightly to suit us and to better improve him. And we were getting there, without a doubt. We were getting there, and he was enjoying it. And then he's had a couple of those seasons, which unfortunately some players have, where he's just had really unlucky injuries. Nothing you can do about it. Got virtually to the end of one stint of rehab and did the same sort of injury. So he's gone through it twice, but he's been our biggest fan. He's been fantastic around the place. So, yeah, from a personal point of view, I'll probably be on the pitch when he scores his first goal in the Premier League for Sheffield United. It'd be a good moment for him, without a doubt. So that's all I want. I want to see him back on the pitch, scoring goals. There's no pressure on him being the missing piece to our jigsaw or anything like that. And as well, it takes as long as it takes just to get him back fit.
Well, someone else who might play an important part as well is Mark Hudson. How pleased are you for him to be on board as a defensive coach, and how much work will he be putting in during this season? Because it will be a tough one, won't it?
Yeah, it'll be a tough one. Listen, the dynamic in how we work, we really, particularly in how we work, and you guys know like the importance and the relationships that goalkeeper coaches have always had with the goalkeepers. Something I've wanted to do for a long time, but last year we really got it working, where Jack Lester worked really closely with the forwards, Stuart McCall with the midfielders, and I was doing the defending side of it. But sometimes when you're a manager, you can't get that relationship that you would get as a coach. So, yeah, I was lucky. We had a lot of experience in the lads in the back line, so they weren't too upset if I'd had to go at them on a Saturday and then Monday morning I'm chatting to them again, But sometimes that's really important that they do feel they've got someone to turn to. And now we've got Mark coming in, who's got the experience of playing through the levels, got the experience of managing. So again, where I'm really looking now, I've got Jack who's managed, Stuart who's managed, and Mark who's managed. So that's big for me as well, and the support that I get from them.
And that experience is really important, isn't it? Because you've had a career that's taken you to Barnsley, to Leeds, to Hibs. You've had ups, you've had downs. How much better a manager are you coming into the Premier League now for all of those experiences that you've had?
Yeah, 100%. I think you'd struggle not to learn and improve with the experiences that you get. And I've been fortunate with how football's changed so much off the pitch in the last 10 years, 15 years, but particularly the last 10. The different ownership groups I've worked with, the different personalities, where they're located all across the world poses its own challenge as well logistically when you're trying to influence and work together. So I've been, and I see it as fortunate. I've been fortunate in a way to work with so many different ownership groups, boards. Everybody works differently, but it does equip you with the skills, I think, if you like, to not panic and be able to still do your job whilst working closely with a board and different owners. And that is a skill that any manager will tell you you've got to have. So, yeah, I think, like I say, I take it as being lucky. Maybe in times when it's not been going so well, I haven't considered it as lucky. But when you look back, I'm certainly a different person at work than what I was a few years ago.
Who are your mentors, Paul? Which managers do you sort of seek advice from?
There's been lots. Listen, there's been lots. I've got 3, like I said, in the staff here, which has been good. Listen, I've been down, seen Roy. I spoke to Roy Hodgson a few times. We actually played him, obviously, the first game of the season. Outside football, Tony Smith, rugby league manager, who's at Hull. Lots of different people who, again, when you're in the company, you'd be foolish not to tap them up. But I think if you get a little bit closer than that, and they're happy enough to be helping you out, then you've got to tap into it. You've got to. I think experience is a big one. Me and what I get from speaking to people who've had a lot of experiences, different experiences, is you tend to deal with things with a lot more of a calmness. And like I said, that's probably the biggest thing I see in say, a Roy with the amount of things that he's gone through. And then when I relate back to myself, like in all those different experiences, you are calmer in moments when you'd probably have exploded and talked yourself out of a job, So, yeah, I think it's all part of the experiences, time that you're doing the job, and then I think you can speed that learning up by speaking to the guys who've been through it and done it before.
For me, Hecky, the key word is experience, and your experience now, and you just talked about how you got managers as coaches as well. It's going to be such a contrast season to last, isn't it? Where you're on that winning run, the confidence is there. Sometimes it's just about ticking over. Now it's about trying to get to double figures in terms of wins, and actually you're going to be losing more games than you'll be winning. So how do you approach that? And do you say anything to the lads in pre-season as you're building up to the start of the season?
Yeah, listen, I think our approach is to win as many games as possible. I don't think we're going to be talking about just aiming for 17th. And I think there's only one place you can go if you fall short then. We want to take the same style, way of playing, brand of football, if you like, into the Premier League. We know it's going to be more difficult. We know we're not going to win as many games, but we're going to try, So that is the approach, without a doubt. Again, one of the things I did in the Premier League season when Chris left and I took over for a little while, that was, if I hadn't have had those experiences that we've been speaking about, that was stepping into a breach where, I came to work for Chris. He'd been the leader of this club and driving it, and the place was flat. It was dead. So we're not in that position, So in terms of where we sit right now, we're in a much better position than that moment in time, the last time I was in the Premier League, for example. So, we're looking forward to it. We think we're in a good place. We're going to do all we can in this window. This window is going to be massively important for us. And we have to work as hard as we can, as quickly as we can to get in the players. So to give us the best chance of winning and getting points out that first game against Palace.
Just one more before we let you go. You've got Palace on the opening weekend of the season. It's a home game, which is great because Bramall Lane's always terrific when it's thronging. You've got Nottingham Forest, which is live on talkSPORT. We're doing your game against, against Tottenham Hotspur, which is upcoming at the beginning of September as well, live on talkSPORT. So we're looking forward to coming to Bramall Lane again. Pre-season, how important are these 30 days now in between now and the start of the campaign? And what are your key messages that you've got to get across to ensure that your players are ready for that big kickoff date on the 12th of August?
Yeah, so these days now are really important. Today's the first day we've got all our players back, together, because of the boys who played international duty. Our messages are the same in terms of how we want to work, what we do well, but there's still areas we need to improve, but we want to really make sure that what we do well, can we do it even better? And then the recruitment's big. And the message to the players and the staff is when the new players come into our building and start working with us, they have to feel what we're about straight away. Our standards are high, we work hard, and we've got a way that we want to play, which may be slightly different to some players. But we want them to feel it and experience it as quickly as possible so we can get them adapted to what we want to do. And likewise, we can also speed that up by recruiting the right players. If we get players with the characteristics we want, then that process should be a little bit easier.
Paul, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Good luck for the season. We'll follow you keenly.
Thanks, guys.
Let's talk Liverpool now, and we spoke about Liverpool's midfield recruitment last week, that they've signed Szoboszlai and McAllister, and they've signed a Greco-Roman wrestler from the pictures that I've seen on Instagram. Jordan Henderson, or Jordan Tiberius Titan Henderson, as he looks like after a summer's worth of training, looks as if he's going to be fit for action, doesn't he, Scott?
I tell you what, mate, he's been genetically blessed, hasn't he? His body fat is not just single figures. It's like 0.9 or something like that. He's looking well. I wonder how many photographs took to get that. But no.
Are you suggesting airbrushing? You're not suggesting airbrushing.
I'm honestly not. I'm just jealous. He looks brilliant. And that's fantastic for Liverpool because he is an absolute leader. And I don't think they had enough leaders, last season. It'd be interesting to see how the 11 and how the squad is. But in terms of when the chips are down, especially away from home, you need a Jordan Henderson, whether it's in the side starting or whether it's, on the bench in the dressing room or just on a daily basis, keeping those standards high. So I think that bodes well for both Jordan, his missus and the club as well.
Yeah. Fascinating to see what happens with him because he was linked earlier in the window with a link up with Saudi Arabia, but I don't think that's on his agenda now, that's for sure. What happens with Trent Alexander-Arnold next season then, Crook? I mean, I can see this sort of, I mentioned it last week actually, I can see the sort of midfield formulating in my mind now with Trent Alexander-Arnold wandering into midfield, Fabinho, Henderson, Szoboszlai, McAllister.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we saw towards the end of the season with Liverpool, and during the internationals with England as well, that Trent Alexander-Arnold is more than capable of doing that sort of hybrid John Stones role, and probably given his defensive deficiencies, that's his best position. I'm intrigued by this Liverpool summer. I think Alexis McAllister is a good player. I don't think he's a great player at this moment in time, and I think the same can be said of Szoboszlai. We know that Kevin Hatchard on this podcast is a big fan of his, but he's a big fan of everything that comes out of Germany, but I don't think he's the finished article yet either. So do I think
he thinks that Bratwurst could do a great job in the Premier League.
Do I think those two signings are necessarily transformative for Liverpool? I'm not so sure, but then you look at their form at the end of the season and you think, well, if they can kick that on, then they're going to be challengers anyway.
No, I think McAllister's a really good signing. I thought he was the second best player in the team that won the World Cup, and he's just got better and better as the season goes on, as the years have gone on. So I think he's a really good signing. In terms of Trent, well, it was different to what he played for England. For England, he was an actual midfielder. For Liverpool, he's that hybrid as Pep's done with a lot of his fullbacks as well. So it'd be interesting to see whether he does that. I think he will, because I think Liverpool, generally speaking, have more possession, and when you have more possession, you can step in. But for England in the big games, he's not going to be playing right back. I think they're almost two different positions or thought patterns from the manager. But one, he'll definitely play, and two, he'll continue to do that hybrid position as he did the end of last season.
Let's talk about another player I think is going to have a good season next season, and it's Darwin Núñez. If you look at his expected goals tally and his actual goals tally last year, I mean, he could have ended up with 30, to be honest with you. He missed a lot of chances. His debut campaign wasn't perfect, there's no doubt about that. There were problems with a bit of fitness. There was the issue after the Crystal Palace game when he was banned because he got a little bit het up. And next season, I've got this feeling he's going to have a really good campaign. Scott, is that how you view him?
Well, look, you know what I think of him. I saw him at Benfica. I thought he was superb. He's a defender's nightmare. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful. He can play as a number 9, but he can come off the left as well. I think, he lacked a bit of confidence at times. It's a big money move. There's a lot of pressure. And obviously with the likes of Erling Haaland just scoring for fun, I think that comparison was slightly unfair. But I'm hoping he'll come through it. I think he's got all the attributes to it. There's no doubt about it. His finishing wasn't good enough last season, but maybe that just is a confidence thing. So if he starts off well, I can see him scoring 20 goals plus, easy.
And just a one-word answer. Top 4 for Liverpool, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Crystal Palace surprised many when they turned to Roy Hodgson to save their Premier League campaign last time out. They've surprised a few more by giving him another year contract and keeping him on for next season too. Is that the right call for you, Alex?
Tough. I mean, I guess you have to ask, if you're Crystal Palace, what are your aims and ambitions for the season? Because I think what Roy Hodgson guarantees you is that you're not going to get relegated. And I think probably that has to be the first priority for Palace. Is he going to turn you into a top 7, top 8 side? No. But then I think without big financial backing, any manager would struggle to do that. We know the players like him. They've re-recruited Sean Derry as part of his backroom staff. That was a ridiculous decision from Patrick Vieira to get rid of a Crystal Palace legend anyway, and probably was the beginning of the end for him. So I'm in favour of that. Obviously, they've got injury problems with Elise, I think is it, who's going to miss the start of the season. Wilf Zaha still training with Crystal Palace. They're still hopeful that he'll sign a new contract. I think Roy Hodgson being there helps in that regard, because we know that Wilf's got a lot of respect for Roy. So, yeah, listen, if I was a Palace fan, I wouldn't be disappointed with the appointment. The interesting question is, does he carry on with that sort of free-flowing football that we saw at the end of last season? Or given that he's got a whole Premier League campaign to navigate, does he revert to type?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, with Wilfried Zaha, I suppose the biggest question here is whether or not he decides to take this big offer from Saudi, because ultimately they've offered him 16 million quid after tax, but there's a bit of friction about whether or not his advisors want a bigger slice of that. One thing that Roy Hodgson did brilliantly last year was getting Elise and Eze to finish the season as well as they did, Scott. And if he can tap into that over the course of the season, then we can see a better footballing style from Crystal Palace, and everyone will be happy. But there's no getting away from the bare facts of the case. This is not a long-term appointment for Crystal Palace, is it?
No, and I'm with Crookie with his answer. It's a very short-term thing. If you want Crystal Palace to stay in the Premier League, then you have Roy Hodgson. And actually, I've said to you this on this pod before, every season that you have Crystal Palace is in the Premier League, then that is a positive. But I think he should start with that kind of attacking play. I love Eberechi, what he did, and his story as well, coming up through the ranks and being released by so many clubs. If you've got him and Elise, I don't know what's going to happen with Zaha, but go attacking, and he can always revert to that defending, Roy, if things don't work out. But look, I think it's very much a short-term thing. It's not really looking for the future and looking for 4 or 5 year contract players. But as I say, it's about Palace being in the Premier League, and I think they will be at the end of next season.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were proved wrong when Roy Hodgson came in at the end of the season and pretty much saved Crystal Palace. And look, I was one of those who was a bit disappointed that Patrick Vieira lost his job. He's back in football. He's at Strasbourg now. And I think Paul Neville's going there with him as well, which means there's a few vacancies at West Ham United. Scott, assistant manager, fancy that?
Listen, I'm just agreed to work more games with you two. I don't know why.
I've noticed this. I've noticed this.
I'm clearly a masochist. So, no, I'm with you two all the way.
First few games of the season, Matterface and Minto I've seen, which is good and looking forward to it.
I would say the dream team, but it's not.
It might be. Scott, thank you very much. Crookie, thank you very much. That's it from us. We are back every Monday throughout the summer with more latest transfer news, managerial changes, and a lot more.